Today's guest is Blaine Anderson, the world-renowned #1 men's dating coach. She has helped over 2,000 clients build confidence and land the girl. Today is a masterclass in everything a man could possibly need to know in order to get the girl of his dreams. We get into what exactly you need to say to approach the girl, how to slide into the DMs, where you should go on your first, second, third dates, when to make that move to close the deal. As a specialist in her field, she has seen it all, and she has got some tips, tricks, and techniques for those of you that are out there in the game. Before the podcast gets kicked off, please just leave us a review on iTunes or Spotify, and of course, check out our Rumble. The links are right down below. We would really appreciate it. Enjoy the podcast.
Way of Will John.
Blaine Anderson, what's going on? How are you?
I am great. Thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you very much for being here. We got a lot to get through. So I'm obviously curious, just in and of myself, how are you at this point? How do we get to be the big time dating coach that you are? How does this help me get to there?
So I started doing dating coaching full time in 2020. And I worked in the travel industry actually before that. And when the pandemic hit, I was essentially unemployed overnight. And so I was like, okay, what am I going to do next? Or right now, even just like fill the time. I wasn't necessarily looking for a new career, but I'd always loved talking about dating, talking about relationships, helping my friends with their dating app profiles. So I was like, okay, how can I, make that into a little more of a business, more scalable, help more men? So that's when I launched my first dating masterclass. So that was summer 2020. And I think at that point, the space was a lot less crowded. There weren't as many dating coaches, especially women. It was more of like the pickup culture, I think, which was popular in the past that guys were, trying and listening to and leaning into. So, I was somewhat unique in that it was from a woman's perspective talking to men. And so, especially during the pandemic when people were struggling with how am I going to meet people? How do I communicate? And even coming out of the pandemic, everyone was like starved for social interaction. It was good timing for me to be giving this advice. So it just kind of took off.
Wow. Okay. And with that in mind, like you said, there's the whole pickup culture, and that's actually perfect. This is a perfect place to start things off. How do you, I had a chance to see, I've seen some of a lot of your posts and your things and a lot of the advice that you've given, and you touch on so many different subjects, right? And one of the things, and we have a lot of YouTube channels, social media platforms, that we're successful on, and you get trolls. You get trolls, and you get people who want to say things. And I can only imagine in your line of work. And I saw one, and I want to ask you. It's not that bad, but because they go. I'm sure they go over the line too. I can only imagine. Most women have over the line stuff in their DMs, but this one, it's more of a philosophical one. The line was, "Don't ask a fish how to catch other fish. Ask a fisherman."
That's probably my most common comment, or like trollish comment, I would say.
What do you say? For that?
My take on that is, if that is, first of all, if that's like how someone feels strongly, like a woman could never give me advice on what a woman wants. I'm like, okay, if that's how you feel, don't listen to my advice. Like, I'm not here to convince anybody that like my way is the right way. Like, my advice won't resonate with everybody, but it resonates with a lot of guys, and a lot of men find it helpful. So that's why, and as long as that is the case, I will keep giving advice. But, from a logistics standpoint, I just think it's kind of crazy that would be the mindset, because who knows women better than a woman? But you're never gonna please everybody.
No, you won't. And I agree with you on the logistics standpoint. I think it would be, in my mind, it makes sense to go to a successful man who is picking up all the girls or has success in his dating world, and also women, because he's not going to have the full perspective, and nor is women, which is why you want to fill a company with men and women, because the perspectives are different, brains are completely different, and the human experience is completely different. So it only makes sense to go to that, especially also for someone like you, if you've had a natural knack for it, like you said, when you were younger, and you wanted to be getting into it. Not everybody you specialized, right? And everybody takes advice from their friends on what to do in their dating lives and do all this stuff. So I'm curious if we could get into a step-by-step guide type stuff. What does a guy got to do in this world, because it's different, than when I was growing up, on approaching a girl? What does it look like? What should he be doing and focusing on?
Well, so first of all, what you need to focus on is the location that you are approaching. Something that a lot of guys get wrong is thinking that bars and clubs are the only places to meet and approach women, where if that's the only places you're leveraging to meet women, you're going to miss out on meeting a whole lot of women, awesome women, who just don't hang out at bars and clubs. Also, the fact that like something on the street, like you see a woman on the street, you see a woman at the grocery store, you see her in a bar in a club, that actually doesn't mean you have anything in common with her, except what you both grocery shop, you both are standing at this club. It doesn't indicate that you have shared values. It doesn't indicate that you have shared interests, hobbies, something to connect over. So the first thing to give yourself a leg up is start approaching and talking to women in places where you have a built-in commonality. Yoga, a bookstore. It could be you take an interest class, a guest speaker, a book club, something where you have something that you already know you both like this thing. It also helps establish trust. You're not just some random person. Okay, you also belong to her gym, or, you share this thing in common. Having that jumping off point, that thing you have in common, is going to make the next step way easier, which is opening the conversation. You can open it in relation to what is going on around you, something relevant. It just depends where you are, but there are a million things that you could say to somebody that is relevant at a yoga class. Like, hi, have you taken this class before? Have you been to this instructor? Like, wow, that was a really hard session. What did you think? That it makes sense to ask. Then like, hey, how are you? At a grocery store or at a club, where does the conversation go? So the next step is then finding something relevant to open the conversation with.
Okay. So where do you stand then on pickup lines? I know that's a huge thing. Should guys be memorizing stuff? Should they be just able to spit stuff off, or?
I think it can be helpful to have a template. A lot of the guys I work with, something we work on is approaching women and meeting more people in real life. And that can be really challenging at first, especially if you're shy or it's something you haven't done before. So having a sort of like template of something you can say is really helpful. But in general, if you are memorizing scripts or somebody else's lines, it is much more likely to come off inauthentic. Anything you're saying to a woman is ideally in your own words. It is coming from a place of authenticity, because women have a sixth sense for BS. I say this all the time. Like, it's just the way it is. They can sense it even subconsciously. So it might not be like this woman's like, that felt inauthentic in her mind, but she's just like turned off, or she doesn't feel like the connection. And that is what it comes down to, is the man not being authentic.
Right. I mean, authenticity works. I mean, obviously, I'm sure not even with the opposite sex in and of itself, but in business deals, in friendships, and it is everything, right? The more authentic you are, the better.
And that's one of the things that I was seeing a lot, especially when I first got started and I would work with men, and they would say, I've been following this pickup culture for years, and it felt unnatural to me. I felt like I was, negging or using these lines, didn't feel authentic to me. And I was doing it anyway because that's what I was told I needed to do, or how I needed to act for it to attract women. But the reality is that's not the only way. And especially if you're looking for long-term results, you're looking to form a relationship, you are better off understanding what women are looking for, understanding what you bring to the table, and then authentically marketing those things, rather than trying to be somebody you're not, trying to act how you think you're supposed to act, or say things you think you're supposed to say. Because it's not going to feel authentic, and that's going to show through.
Picking up on that pickup culture, let's say the art of negging, and this whole kind of mentality that's been built up. Where do you stand on that? Because from where I stand, there is, I don't want to say it's true by no means, and I know we needed to define it first, but there may be some kernels of truth, right, to why this became so popular. So maybe you could touch on why that is and what you think.
So I feel like the basis of negging is you are trying to make this woman feel things. You know, you want her to have like these emotional spikes. And there is absolutely truth to that. Women want to feel things when they are around you and you are talking to them. But there is a difference between forming a real connection and having her feel things than sort of like jerking her around. And absolutely, I think negging can like work in the short term, and there's a lot of things that pickup artists say that like absolutely can work in the short term, but they generally are more oriented around playing games and sort of trying to manipulate her to feel a certain way than just to form real and authentic connections. And it also depends on what you're looking for. You know, I think if you're just looking to like pick up girls at the bar or get her phone number, like the short term sort of rewards, then maybe that is something that can work in your favor. But if you are looking to form longer, mature, lasting relationships, starting off with games, in my opinion, is not the path to success.
There's got to be a wide variety of guys listening to this. Some guys looking for relationships and some guys just trying to pick up girls wherever it may be. How different are the approaches should they be? Is one person more direct in getting straight to it? Obviously, it's one thing isn't going to work on every girl. Otherwise, we wouldn't be sitting here at all. So what do you suggest for this guy who's just trying to have fun and this guy who's trying to, you know, look for the right girl? Because it could be possible that he's executing the wrong thing he could be looking for and doing the wrong thing. And, you know.
I think top of funnel, you know, when you're trying to meet and attract women, you're going to be in good shape with the same sort of approach. You want to be trusting. You want to form a connection. You want her to feel things. You want to come off as high status. And then as you get to know somebody, whether you are looking for something long-term or just having fun, then how you communicate is going to differ. And I think to your point, like you can get right to it a little quicker. I'm always a fan of speaking your mind and asking for what you want. Some women are going to be down with it and others won't. But the sooner you sort of get to the bottom of whether or not she is going to be compatible with whatever it is you're looking for, the quicker you can either lean into that or lean out of that and move on.
I mean, that makes sense. That totally makes sense. Where I'm curious of is how much are you helping? You said you were helping some of your friends adjust their, you know, their dating profiles and stuff like this. What about all the guys that are trying to jump into DMs or trying to meet girls without actually having? How does this work? Do you help guys with this? Do you help move them off of this, or what do you do?
Yeah. No, I think Instagram can absolutely be leveraged as a dating app. I mean, it's like the biggest marketplace in the world. You have unlimited access to millions and millions of people. I actually have a free guide on this. So if you want it, hit me up in my DMs and I'll send it to you. But the thing that most guys get wrong when it comes to Instagram, there's actually a couple things, is one, you need to have a compelling profile. That means it doesn't mean you need to be an Instagram influencer or a star or a GQ model, but your profile should look like your dating app. It should put you in a positive light and share a little bit about you, because she's not going to go out or even respond to a random guy who she doesn't know, has no mutual friends, and just has like a tiny thumbnail blurry photo of him and his dog from 10 feet away. Like, that's just not it. So you need to build a compelling profile. And then the other thing that guys constantly get wrong is they're shooting their shot without qualifying the woman. If you literally spent 2 minutes on my profile, literally 2 minutes in the About Me section, or watching one video, I literally wear a ring on both hands to avoid confusion, like you would realize, okay, she's not a viable partner for me because she's already married. And the number of people who shoot their shots in my DMs every single day, it's like, you're wasting your time and you're just setting yourself up for more rejection. So just take the 2 to 5 minutes to look at this girl's profile and understand, not only is she single, but does it make sense? Do you have anything in common with her? What are you going to talk about? Do you live remotely close to each other? Because if you live a 10-hour flight away, what are you really looking for here? A pen pal? If that's what you're looking for, like, maybe it makes sense. But if it's not, then, you know, move on and find somebody who has things in common with you, looks like there's a good chance they're single, and is like geographically located someplace that makes sense.
is there something they're supposed to say in that sense? I mean, I know it's always going to be this, but I feel like there's all guys are always looking for the secret key. We're
Of
looking
course they
for
are.
things
The
because
cheat code.
that's the thing. Yeah, yeah. All guys want a cheat code, right? And it's like, what do I say? And that's how pickup lines, I'm assuming, got started too. It was like, I said this one thing to this chick once, and I swear to God, it worked. And like, so it was like, no way, I'm gonna say that to this girl, and maybe it works. And right, and so they try like this. And so, all right, actually, even before even trying to understand, because I guess this will go to the same sort of area. What is the profile? What's a good profile? Like, what's a good dating app? How do I deal? You know, what's this guy? How is he supposed to deal with dating apps and stuff like that?
It's simple. A few high quality photos of you in different outfits, in different locations, making different facial expressions. I don't want every single one of your photos to be you looking directly at the camera with a big cheesy smile like on your face. You know, that's not it. Give us a little variety. It should be clear what you look like. You need a full body shot, and then highlight a few of your interests. I don't want a bunch of mirror selfies. That doesn't tell me anything about you. Give me something to connect on. Are you surfing? Are you making pottery? Are you walking your dog? Are you on a boat? Okay, that tells me something about who you are. And so that applies for dating apps and Instagram. Just literally baseline a few high quality photos that are clear what you look like and clear like how you spend your time.
Which makes sense, right? I mean, it's still going to fall back into that authenticity part, right? You don't want to put pictures of you next to a Ferrari with your mansion and
Well, also the type of person, yeah, you're going to attract with that is also maybe not a person who is authentically into you.
yeah. There's an interesting book that's been getting a lot of love lately by a psychologist. I can't remember the name. It's a textbook. His name's David Buss. I believe his name's David Buss. We can check these guys. Throw that up on the screen if it's there. But he talks about the biggest thing affecting attraction for a woman or helping someone attract a woman is status.
He's right.
All right. So how does a guy then get better status, high status, or project that?
So this is something I talk a lot about in my masterclass in my course because you're right. Status is so opaque. Like, what does this really mean? Like, okay, I know girls want high status guys. So I break it down into actually 7 categories that you can better understand. And then so you can understand the levers to pull to show your high status. But just as like a little bit of like an overview there, because we don't have time for my full lesson. There are a few things that make up somebody who's high status. Confidence is one. Boundaries, respect. So do you respect yourself? Do you respect other people? Do you have boundaries with other people? This means not bending over backwards for some girl you barely know. So if she's jerking you around, canceling your date, you're not going to, accommodate this stranger just because she's beautiful. Set a boundary and stick to it. That's also showing that you respect yourself and that you're confident enough that you know you're a catch and there's plenty of women out there who will see it. So not getting hung up on any one woman. Another way to demonstrate high status.
Yeah. I mean, I found that really interesting. It's not, like you said, it's kind of hazy. It's like one of those words like power. It's like, all right, how do I get power? It's like, some people who have power, but you couldn't necessarily, it's really hard to build a template, right, to high status. And I think it gets equated a lot to money, looks, right? Guys are very singular with the...
And this is because I feel like guys put so much emphasis on what a woman's appearance is. And I guarantee a man cares more about a woman's appearance than a woman cares about a man's appearance, for the most part. And you can actually trace this back to evolutionary biology. When you think about it from a mating standpoint, men can see a lot of what they need to know about a woman and if they would want to mate with her just by appearance. Does she, are the signs pointing to her being fertile, of the right age? Even things like health, like shiny hair, good oral hygiene, like these are things that make somebody attractive even in the modern age, but they're actually also pointing to, okay, this would be a good person to reproduce with. Are they in good physical shape? That sort of thing. Where a woman needs to know a lot more in order for a man to be a good mate. Because if she mates with a man who, she's pregnant and then he leaves and leaves her high and dry, she is then left saddled with the burden of offspring for the foreseeable future. So she needs to get to know a man, and is he going to be a good provider for her and potential offspring before she can decide, okay, this would be a good mate. And that's obviously oversimplified, but if you think about it in literally caveman terms, it honestly makes a lot of sense. And of course, we've evolved a lot in modern times. We have so much more to consider with social media and how we communicate, which is why I think people are struggling with dating. But when you take it down to the base, like the bare bones, we're actually pretty simple animals.
I would agree with that. And even though there is this crazy thing, I mean, social media is no joke though, right? And so I wanted to take it, sticking with that theme, we did this actually, some of the guys who are going to be editing this, we were discussing how much of a trap social media and your phone just in general can be by checking our iPhone times, right? It gives you that time, right? And, one guy had like almost 7-8 hours, right? And he was just like, I know I'm addicted. He's like, it's not like I don't know. I know I can't stop. He's like, I can't stop. And so, and somehow the situation or the conversation got put on to what happens on an explore page, right? If I we have several Instagram accounts and most of them have to do with football, soccer. Sorry. All of them have to do with soccer. And if we hit the button, Instagram model, bikini, Instagram model, Instagram, right? It understands that we're males, and that's it. We don't follow any of these women. We don't know any of them, right? But it just has decided that that's what we want to see based on all of the data it's getting, right? And so the reason I say that is because it's like, yeah, we as biology, this is a crazy new world. This is a crazy thing to have to do with. And so how do you suggest guys deal with if I saw you discussing Instagram models and maybe not following them, or what these guys kind of like, they live in this dream world maybe where they just like put a comment on there like, hey, so is she going to come back and like, we're going to get married, or?
Yeah, well, I think Instagram does give an unrealistic perception that there's like all these options out there. And there's all these beautiful options out there. So it makes it easier actually to think like, oh, I'm not going to approach this woman in person, or I'm not going to put effort into this in real life connection because I have all these other potential options, whether it's on a queue in a dating app or on Instagram, where actually I think that's really unhealthy. And to your point, Instagram is like putting these women in front of you because they have discovered that is what is going to keep your profile, like not necessarily you personally, but like a man in this age group, heterosexual, on the app for longer. And so to think that you are going to be able to outsmart this app that literally has millions or billions of dollars behind keeping you on it is just not realistic. So you have to set really firm boundaries. You can set time limits. So like I work on Instagram, but I have a 15-minute time limit per day on Instagram. And, my stuff gets posted by someone else, but I'm able to go on, check it, okay, make sure everything looks good, and then I get off. And I will be the first to admit I often end up ignoring that and spending more time, but then at least every 15 minutes, I'm getting a reminder. And even with that, it's really hard. So I think it's super important that everyone sets boundaries with their phone, with social media, because it is just too easy to get completely sucked in and then be living in this virtual world that isn't real life. And guess what? Those photos are edited. She doesn't look like that anyway.
Yeah, that's a whole subject in and of itself. I don't know if I know any Instagram models, to be perfectly honest, but I would love to have a bunch of them on to talk about what the real deal is. I mean, I know that was in the zeitgeist, that was in the news, let's say a few months back, especially. But just to comment on your Instagram thing, obviously, I know you have a TikTok as well, and we have TikTok, and we're quite successful with the stuff we put on. Yes, most of our stuff, it can be flashy, but it's mainly educational, right? It deals with language learning, and some of it deals with soccer. But while I remember back in the day, I had to change my Facebook profile when Facebook was a thing, for the younger generation, to just football clips, like my favorite players. So it would just be like, I would just change it to my favorite players. And then I thought, perfect. Now I won't scroll and see what this guy is up to over here, what they're doing right that. But what ended up happening, thinking that I was taking control, it's kind of like you. It's like they have billions of dollars. Well, I would end up going to send a message to someone on Facebook, see that, oh, no way, they got the game from 1966 is on right here. And then I start watching it. And then 30 minutes in, I realize this is no better either. I'm not supposed to be watching the game. I mean, it's better because I'm not doing something random, but I'm not supposed to be watching the game. All right. And so I just wanted to say, because TikTok is out there and I don't have that problem. Oddly enough, TikTok kind of, I don't want to say repulses me, but it definitely pushes me. It's so interactive. Like if you scroll up, it's just like boom, bang, bing, boom. And I don't have any, it doesn't attract me. That and Twitter, just because Twitter seems like a negative place for me. That's just me. But last thing on this certain subject, OnlyFans has now become a thing, right? Porn has been a thing forever, but it's obviously the accessibility of it has changed. How do you deal with that for your clients in trying to have and create real human interactions? Or do you get them completely off, or?
I wouldn't say I have a rule to like you have to give it up, but I think it's really detrimental, especially to younger minds and younger generations. Really anybody, because you think about how you used to have to watch porn. It's like dial up, you're like waiting for your computer to connect. It's like kind of pixelated. You're shutting your laptop when your parents come by or whatever. And that is just, it makes it so much easier now. And it's so much more accessible. It is too easy to get to. So if the trade-off is like, oh, I know I'm going to see this woman naked doing XYZ here on my phone, and I don't have to do anything except maybe pay a few dollars. Or I can go out and like talk to women, maybe get rejected, put myself out of my comfort zone, maybe get a date, maybe see her naked down the road, or maybe never. It's really easy to choose the path of least resistance. And I think that's super unfortunate, because that path of least resistance isn't leading to healthy relationships, isn't honestly leading to long-term happiness. So it's unfortunate.
No, yeah, I would agree. It seems that you're able to hide. That's what it would appear, right? And that you're not developing any skills. And if we talk about status, as far as I can understand, if you can develop a skill and get really good at a skill, it'll give you some sort of status within some sort of community. And someone will see that and recognize that this is a person whose commitment, they're persistent, they don't give up. Okay, this person is clearly better than the other person who's just constantly flicking through the phone or paying for whatever it is.
Absolutely. And I think it gives a false sense of closeness to other people. Social media, whether it's porn, OnlyFans, social media, even like Snapchat, these like rooms where you can talk to other people. It's like, oh, like I have these like, friends online, or I'm like close to this person because we talk every day, but it's a false sense of closeness. And that's actually why I tell my clients, if you've matched with a woman, arrange the date and then no more texting. Tell her you're excited to see her and, get to the date. First of all, you're way more likely to text yourself out of a date than into one. So once you've like got it, just move on, go connect in person. But then the second thing, going back to what I was saying before, is it gives a false sense of closeness. And then you both show up on the date, you think, oh, I already know this person so well, they're so cool. And then it's a totally different ballgame in person. So when you don't feel that same closeness, you write it off as a lack of chemistry or incompatibility, when the reality is this is just a stranger and you had way too high of expectations going in because you'd already communicated and texted or whatever so much.
Let's talk a little bit about when we're actually at the date now. Like, what happens for the guy? I saw some interesting stuff about who should pay for a first date now, and and the gender roles were a bit different and less blurred, let's say, for good or for bad or for whatever. People, I've never really dug into it. It was clear, right? But now it's different. Where do you stand on that?
Okay, my stance, coming from a place of getting men the best results, is pay for the first date. A lot of women are going to expect it. Some women won't. But either way, you are going to be putting yourself in the best possible position for a second date if you offer to pay. And maybe she says, no, and insists on splitting it. Obviously, let her. Don't like fight her for the check if that's important to her to split it, but offer. And sure, you can say whoever invited should pay. That's usually the guy, so okay, you should pay. But even if she was the one who took the lead and invited you, I still think you should offer to pay because I think that's going to get you the best results most often.
What about now the best place? Where is these dating ideas? Where should a guy with his best intentions in mind of, making this second date, third date, whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, for a first date. Yeah. Or actually, let's run through it. Run through the gamut. Yeah. And I think that'll help. So
a first date, especially if you met this person online, should be very lightweight. Think of it rather as date 1 as date 0. This is a vibe check. Are we both who we said we are? Do we have anything in common? Is there some sort of connection here? You don't need a lot to figure that out. And in fact, having too much time can actually be detrimental, especially if there's not a connection. And coming from the perspective of the guy should pay. Do you want to buy a fancy dinner or expensive event tickets for somebody that you don't end up having interest in? No. So a first date should be something lightweight. Drinks, coffee, walk, food truck, just a check-in. Pick someplace and rinse and repeat it for all of your first dates. Maybe you have a few places you go to. The idea isn't that you're reinventing the wheel or you're trying to impress her or stand out with this. It's just to meet each other. So control the controllables. Make sure it's someplace where you can find seats, where you're going to be able to hear each other talk. If you're at a really loud bar worrying about, can I push myself forward to get a drink, or are we going to be able to hear each other, or is the food going to suck? Then you're not focusing on what you're there to find out, which is, okay, is there a connection? So keep the first date super easy, have a few go-to spots, and stick with those. Then second and third dates, you can get a little more interesting. Maybe you do drinks on your first date. So then your second date is dinner. Again, not a fancy 5-course dinner, but someplace you really enjoy either way and that you want to share with her. It's going to help you determine, okay, is this a good match? Do we have similar interests or like similar things? Not that, enjoying the same restaurant is a deal breaker, but it'll give you a sense for her vibe. Then maybe on the third date, things have gone well. So you do something a little more involved, like an activity. You go on a bike ride. You do a paint and sip. You cook something together. Something where you are going to be seeing her trying something new, or you're going to be doing something new together, because that's going to tell you a lot about the other person. And there's space in there for flexibility. Maybe the activity date isn't till date 4 or 5 and you do another dinner or you go on a hike, depending on what your interests are. But you want to keep things interesting and try new things in the first 5 dates so you can see each other in different dynamics or in different scenarios and understand if they're dynamic.
Before I ask my question, you said something I'd never heard before. What did you say? Paint and sit?
Paint and sip. It's something, yeah. It's like you
paint and sip.
Paint like a paintbrush and sip like a drink. It's a paint and sip.
What is
it's
this?
Okay, they have it here in the US. It's like almost like a painting class where you show up and you can sometimes it's BYOB, you can bring wine or they have drinks there. And there's an art activity, which is oftentimes painting, where they'll even be an instructor and you're all painting the same thing. So it's not like you have to show up and have any sort of creative, you don't have to be creative yourself or have an art background. There's someone who's okay, we're all going to be replicating this photo, this painting of a pumpkin or whatever it is. And then you're oftentimes sharing an easel with your date or with who you came with. So you're working together. It's really fun.
Okay. Yeah, I've never heard of that. That's insane. Okay, though, you've got these dates set out, so they kind of have a way. I'm pretty sure a bunch of guys are going to want to know which is the classic movie thing. When's this making the move? When are guys supposed to figure out they got to read the girl? Guys notoriously bad at reading women and stuff like this.
Yeah. So here's the thing that guys oftentimes get wrong. Let's just talk about going for a first kiss. They're on a date. They haven't touched her basically once. There's been no physical contact. And then at the end of the date, they've heard that you need to go for a kiss to set a romantic tone, and they just dive in. And the problem with that is you haven't laid the groundwork. So the first time you touch her shouldn't be for the kiss. You should hug her when she arrives. You should, have your hand on her knee, tap her knee as you guys are talking and you're laughing. You help her with her jacket. That's a very easy way to get some physical touch in. Put your arm around her. Put your hand on the small of her back as you're guiding her to or from the table. And then notice how she reacts to these things. Is she leaning in as you're talking and your hand is on her knee, or is she leaning away? Look, is she touching you back? Look for signs of comfort. And then as you see those signs, you can make moves to escalate.
And on another point in your dating kind of list there, what was absent was home. Is that by, like, is it like inviting someone to your house or to some place? Maybe not, depending on the age, not like if you're a kid, like, if you're 17 or 18, 20, maybe even nowadays, you're living at home, not like that. But like, what about that? Is guys trying to skip these things?
Yeah, I would say third date is the absolute soonest, because you want to make sure you both feel comfortable. Like, even from, it sounds silly, but like a safety perspective of both parties, you want to make sure you have at least some inkling of who this person is, and there's been some amount of trust built before you invite her into your home, and before, she's going to feel most likely comfortable. So I absolutely think third or fourth, fifth date, inviting her over to cook together is an awesome date. But just be conscientious that your home is going to say a lot about you. So sometimes I think guys are like, ooh, I'm going to invite her over. And then, they don't take the time to like clean up or like empty the trash, wipe down the toilet seat, light a candle, make sure those things are in place, because it's going to do more harm than good if they aren't.
I have to, because the next thing I was going to do is ask you about stories. So I might as well interject with one from mine. One of my good friends, this is forever ago, I think college, or potentially I left college early to go to play, and so I think they were in college, and I didn't drink. I don't really drink because of playing, and they did, and we were at a bar. They love to go to your classic standard bars, downtown, and we were in a group, but it was just 3 or 4 guys, and there were girls with us, but as what happens, some of the guys broke off to the side. We'd broken off to the side, and we'd met a few girls, and it was at the point that we wanted to, that bar was, I think, closing, and there was a house party, there was somewhere else, and the idea was at first could go there, then that got closed down, and so we were thinking, well, where do we go? It's a group of 3, 4 guys and like 4 or 5 girls. We still want to keep going, And the idea was that we just go back to my friend's place, right? He has a place that's the closest. And we said, cool, we'll go back to your place. And he said, he kind of like brought us over. He's like, all right, well, just let me go first, because I got to Febreze it first. I got to Febreze the place.
Bad side.
Ended. Never. Date. Things over, night over, that didn't work out. Everybody went home. It was over. So yes, I concur with that. But on your side, you've probably worked with a whole bunch of people, and obviously without divulging names, even though I would very happily say this for my friend. Do you have horror stories? Like, are there stories, or are you just like, wow, you did not say that, or like, you did not do that?
I probably have a few. So the first thing I'll say is the majority of my clients are awesome. They are successful, they are good looking, they bring so much to the table, and I love working with them, and they see great results. But because my target audience is single men, I inevitably do hear, some sort of wild or questionable stories when looking at it from like a woman's perspective, or even from a guy who maybe has a bit more experience. So one thing that I just thought was funny, I have a Discord community for clients where people can ask questions, support each other, and it's really awesome. It's a super positive space. But every so often someone slips through who doesn't quite get it, doesn't quite get what the purpose of it all is. And he was just and this particular person was really frustrated. And he was like, I just don't understand it. I'm in good shape. I make 6 figures and I have a purebred Pomeranian. And I was like, what?
What does that do?
What? Yeah, exactly. What does having a purebred Pomeranian have to do with attracting women? But he was so focused on like the superficial details of what he thought a woman would see on the outside, like in decent shape, like make six figures, has a purebred Pomeranian, that he was missing like who he was internally and what he brought to the table. And it was just like one of those head shaking moments. And I was like, what are you talking about?
Do you really think though, like, and you mentioned this, right? And that does seem to be the case, right? Is that you don't have to be the perfect looking man and you can still get a woman who would be considered a high status woman based on her looks and even her personality as well. Do you really think though, like, that it can be turned, like you can have no looks, no coordination, not potentially be that great of a mate, but have some quality, some high status thing, and that is enough for you? Because I mean, sure, there are guys out there listening thinking that they're also competing in some sense. I know I'm competing with the 6-figure Pomeranian man.
But he wasn't getting the girls.
Yeah, that's true. That's just so, which is what I'm getting at though, is like, so then what is that one thing to cultivate if you truly believe there is?
So you have to bring something to the table. To your point, you said like there has to be a reason you are a good mate. Like if you're looking at it from like a biology standpoint, like what do you bring to the table? Are you really successful? Do you work really hard? Are you confident and funny? Yeah, if you don't bring anything to the table, like it's going to be tough to attract high quality women. But what women value are traits that can be developed. You can do some, like you have to, you can't change your looks, but you can have really good style that makes you look elevated. You can take good care of yourself. You can be in good shape. You can make sure you're getting your hair cut and, have your beard trimmed and brush your teeth. And that can take you that takes you as far as you need to go in your looks. You can develop skills. You can, to the point we talked about earlier, it's really easy to sit inside and be on your computer playing video games rather than going out and developing a real skill. Skills are so attractive, and it doesn't have to be something that a woman is necessarily interested in. Let's say you pick up woodworking and you're like an excellent woodworker and you can like make anything. Like that is attractive, and there are plenty of women who are going to find that because you stuck with it, because you're passionate about it, because you put time and effort into cultivating it. That's attractive to women.
I have more of a psychology question in this. What is it? Because I don't think I've truly even asked this question of a woman. What is it that is so interesting? Because for guys, most men would not be able to get over the initial thought of if they see a woman and they're not attracted to her, there is virtually not much that she can do to change his opinion apart from changing her physical appearance. At first, it is something that is so crucial to attracting, a male. And so on the flip side, what is it like? This is more of a philosophical question. What is it like then on the female side? Just what do you guys see first? Like when you have those guys, clearly you're going to notice, yes, you will notice if the guy is good or he's but once it passes that part, you guys must be looking at something else. I'm curious on how that mechanism actually works in the female brain.
Well, and this goes back to what I was saying before about evolutionary psychology. Like a man can see pretty immediately whether or not he like wants to proceed with a girl, at least initially, and like would be interested in like having sex with her, basically, where a woman needs to see more demonstrated from a man before she feels that way. So women just usually aren't making as quick of snap second decisions. So yes, there is a part of it that's like, what do you look like? Are you standing up straight? Are you speaking with confidence clearly? Are you mumbling and not making eye contact and slouching? Like those all tell her things about how you perceive yourself. And that's going to be her first data point for how to perceive you. So how you perceive yourself. So there absolutely is like a superficial initial sort of check. But then if you pass that check, most of the time it's not like, oh, I would want to sleep with him or I would want to date him. Then she still needs to know more about your status. And going back to what I said before, like, okay, you're really good at woodworking. That sounds so random. And maybe that's not something that makes you money. But what that shows, even subconsciously, is the ability to provide. you know how to be dedicated. You know how to get good at something. So subconscious level, that is going to be attractive to women. The discipline, the confidence around it, the ability to then translate that into something longer term.
Right. Right. Yeah, that whole part is really, really interesting. I want to go back to our chronological events here. So we've gone from the pickup, we've gone from the date, we've gone attempt to the first kiss. How are you dealing with clients and sex? And it's because sometimes they may have good experiences, bad experiences. Maybe some guys have nerves around this. There's inexperienced guys with experienced girls or whatever. How do you go about how they should approach that first interaction?
Yeah. So here's another thing that I think guys can get wrong is putting too much emphasis on sex too soon, or taking a conversation sexual when you actually haven't been physical with her yet. So that's the number one thing I'll say, just from a first sort of like check standpoint, is you shouldn't be like texting her sexy messages if you haven't crossed that line in person yet. That's a really quick way to turn her off, or, kind of shoot yourself in the foot. So keep that in mind. Anything that you do should be happening first in person. Second is, there are a lot of times where one person maybe is more sexually experienced than the other, or the guy feels, unsure or uncomfortable on how to escalate. The best thing you can do is to just be open and talk about it. If you're trying to read her mind and understand if she's ready or where she's at, that is a very quick way to have a misalignment of expectations. So talk to her about it. What's she vibing? What's she feeling? And then more specifically, as you do start getting physical, ask her what she likes. Tell her what you like. It can be really hot, and also is just a really good way to ensure both parties are, one, comfortable, and two, like enjoying themselves. So communication, no matter where you're at, whether it's a first kiss or you're having sex, is key.
Isn't part of the problem the desire for men in general to already have the answers and already be that confident and not have to ask, right? There's that stereotype, right, of the guy who doesn't need to, and like, he obviously knew, obviously you wanted to sleep with me, and obviously this, and obviously I know where we're going, I don't need to ask directions and stuff like that. And so I would imagine that also that portion of maybe not wanting to know, men, I would imagine in that sphere especially, is the place where we don't want to be vulnerable. I mean, it's a vulnerable part for both parties, obviously, but men are in a sexual nature also are expected to, let's say stereotypically, know what you're doing. Men, he is supposed to be good at sex.
I think that's a really dangerous misconception. And I think that's what results in people having different realities of what happened in certain situations. It's not like a sure thing that it's going to end badly, but you're a lot less likely to have a woman say like, hey, I actually wasn't comfortable with that, or he was too aggressive or too pushy, if you just ask. And it doesn't mean you're like, can I kiss you right now? Like, no, that's lame and sounds like really unmasculine. But if you're like, I'm so attracted to you and I want to kiss you right now, like, that's hot. And it's not like I'm saying you always have to ask. If the mood is right and you can tell she's into it, go for it. But if you aren't sure and you feel some hesitancy around her wanting it, whether it's a kiss or something more, ask, because there's just way too much possibility for misalignment or miscommunication, and that can have like really serious consequences.
Do you ever run into guys that are not interested at all in the dating aspect of that? Like, you have clients that are coming from all sorts of worlds. Do you turn guys away that are just like interested, like they're just like, I just want to sleep with a bunch of women and you need to tell me how, because you have all of this data, and so sort this out? And are there guys like that, and what do you do with them?
So first of all, I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to date around or just looking for casual sex. By all means, as long as you're honest with the women that you are communicating or dating, like, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. my advice, and the guys who I tend to attract who want to work with me tend to be either looking for more dates because they want to eventually find a long-term partner, or looking for a long-term partner. And I think that's in part because that's like who my advice is targeted towards. And that is where my principles and sort of like methodology guide. But you could absolutely use my advice, take my courses, and use it to just, have more casual dates. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I would say, my courses are not inexpensive, nor is working with me one-on-one. So to make that sort of like investment, people are usually pretty serious about like wanting to take this part of their life to the next level.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that would make sense. The other thing that I was gonna ask is a bit on the flip side. The guy who, actually, before I even go there, do you ever suggest guys? What about the age difference types of things? And traditionally we have big splits in men being older and women being younger. Do you ever suggest guys go for a younger girl or an older girl, or age? Or
So I am a firm believer that age is just a number. With that said, you are going to tend to have more in common with someone in your age range. So that doesn't mean you have to be the exact same age, but plus or minus 3 years, like you are going to just naturally have more in common. You're going to be more likely to be at a similar stage in life. That absolutely does not mean somebody younger or older couldn't work out, but it's just something I advise people to keep in mind.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that makes sense. Where I was going to go with the other one is the guys that are obsessed with maybe, and you see this in other endeavors as well. When you're completely obsessed on trying to get something, usually you push it away, right? And so I would imagine there are some of these guys with this picture perfect girl in their head with the picture perfect marriage and date, and she's got to fit all these. What about selection? Like, how do you get like once they go through the course and it is any girl at the bookstore or at the grocery store? Are they just to go for this, or do you start helping them say, all right, what is your qualities? Do you send them to that special place where they can find more women?
So absolutely, something I do with clients is understanding the type of woman they are interested in alongside with who they are as a man. And then, okay, where is the intersection of where she's already spending time and where you can spend time to meet her or to have contact, and then strategizing around how you would start a conversation there, because how you approach a woman at the gym is going to be very different than how you approach a woman at the bookstore, for example. So strategizing around that is absolutely something I work on. But then I really do encourage guys to think really critically about what are must-haves and what are nice-to-haves, and what are things you don't need when it comes to a relationship. Because a lot of times I think people, men and women, are telling themselves they need certain things from a partner, but the reality is those things aren't going to necessarily have any impact on whether or not that person would be a good wife or a good husband. And in fact, they might even be in contrast to that person being a good partner. So I do encourage clients to, sort of mix up what they're assuming they want and be more open-minded to things that might actually not have occurred to them before, but would be a good indicator of a partner for them based on who they are, their lifestyle, and what they want long-term, because obviously that's different for everybody.
Uh-huh. I want to reverse real quick. When guys are making that approach and with a woman and they've gotten into some sort of conversation and it's about time to leave. Back in the day, the only option was to get a phone number. Nowadays, I'm going to assume you got a million different platforms and ways and things. How do they go approach this?
I say keep it classic, go for the phone number. To the point of what we were talking about before, it's like we all spend enough time on social media as it is. Do you really want her being distracted by a billion other like people and guys and videos every time she opens up the app to talk to you? Just keep it classic, keep the phone number. It also sends a stronger signal of interest on your part, not just like, oh, I'm going to like watch you from a distance. Again, the social media gives that false sense of closeness.
I see. The other aspect, what about, and I'm sure this has happened to all guys, what about when you get a number and then she either ghosts you, you don't get, what to do then? What happens? Like, what should the actions actually be?
Absolutely nothing. Move on. The quicker you can move on from somebody who has ghosted you and therefore doesn't deserve your attention, the better. And, you can't, like, okay, is there something we could learn from this? Maybe you rushed a little bit for asking for the phone number. Do you need to build a little more of a connection or trust first next time? I'm not saying don't look internally and see what you can do differently, but the reality is there are a million reasons any one woman is going to ghost you that actually have nothing to do with you. This is essentially a stranger. Her ghosting you has no bearing on who you are as a man. And in fact, is more of a reflection of who she is. And you don't want to be with somebody who doesn't have the common courtesy to have base level communication and just let you know they aren't interested or they can't go out.
Yeah, I mean that definitely. I would agree with that a ton. And I saw you speaking about dates that get canceled or first dates that get canceled and what to do, which you have similar advice, no?
Yeah, obviously there are legitimate reasons to cancel a date. And if she apologizes and it's a real reason, ideally she indicates or suggests another time to meet up. But if she doesn't, you can say like, not a problem, like, let me know if there's another day or how about this day instead. But if she doesn't give you a reason or she cancels twice, it's not meant to be. You can say like, thanks for letting me know. And that's it. Or not a problem. Like, I don't think it's meant to be. Best of luck. Because again, the best indicator of future behavior is past behavior. So if you've barely even been out with this girl and she can't commit and she's flaky and this and that, is that really somebody who you want to be in a relationship with or you want to keep bending over backwards for? No, go find somebody who's not going to do that because there are plenty of women who won't.
Yeah, I find it funny because that's a place where humans are funny just in general.
Humans
right?
are
because
funny.
Someone that goes really, really, truly, honestly, because I think there's also this weird game that men have to play where I think, and I'm not sure where I was reading this, but they did. I don't want to call this a true study, but they had and I'm going to butcher the results, but I'm somewhere around. I'm somewhere correct. They had 10 women and 10 men that they had to go ask. And they asked the 10 women straight up front. I think they got some, maybe not model, but good looking man. Will you sleep with me? Essentially right there. And I don't believe any of the women said yes. And I think maybe it was 3 or 4 men, maybe 3, maybe less. Obviously, you see the difference here that said, okay, to a complete stranger, right? And to bring that back to the ghosting thing, it seems because women are perceived as the ones who are giving the sex or have the keys, yes, and choosing, that a man, when he gets a phone number, or maybe I should say a low status or a lower status man who gets a phone number, may have this idea that I got one of these. I got one. I can't let it go. And perhaps that leads them to these behaviors of texting again and then calling and then doing all that stuff. And so that probably isn't the best way to go about it, I can imagine, but
Absolutely.
Getting them to understand that is tough.
Yeah, and I think you're spot on. It's same with like getting a match online. It's like, oh, I got this match, and then he overinvests. So this guy who doesn't get a lot of phone numbers, doesn't get a lot of matches, overinvests in this one woman who he actually doesn't even know and who she doesn't even see him as a person yet because she hasn't gotten to know him. And so the ways to counterbalance that are and to not overinvest in any one woman is to give yourself more options. If you're approaching one woman a month and you get her phone number, yeah, you're going to feel like, okay, like I have to like really hold on and make this one match or one woman work. Whereas if you're putting yourself out there, you've built and created a life to meet a lot of people and give yourself a lot of opportunities to ask for women's phone numbers and meet women, you are going to be much less inclined to overinvest in any one person and then display those qualities that are low status and going to be a turnoff to her.
And I kind of want to get to, since we're getting here to the end, the biggest things that I've seen essentially, and these are things that I would agree with the most, building confidence, building skills, right, and building your status through these skills are basically the best things to do essentially. Obviously, there are going to be subsets of other things that you can do in order to make yourself appear, better to the opposite sex. What about guys that can't get over anxiety, or that can't get over the, you know, the fear of the approach? Do you help them? What do you do for these guys?
Yeah. So first of all, anxiety is absolutely a sliding scale. There's like very intense anxiety that is going to require working with a doctor or a psychologist. And I'm very clear that that's not who I am or what I offer. Like if you're having panic attacks, that's something that needs to be addressed before you come to work with me. But it is absolutely natural to have a certain level of just baseline anxiety about approaching and talking to a stranger or talking to a woman. So that is okay. So that is absolutely something I help work through. And high level, there's sort of two things to counteract that. One is increasing your opinion of yourself. If you know you're awesome because you're high status, you have all these awesome hobbies, you respect yourself, you have friends and a job you're excited about, you're a lot less likely to then put a woman just because she is hot or is attractive higher than you. If you think you're awesome, you're more likely to say, okay, this is just another human, even if she's attractive, because that's really what she is. So that's number one, is improving your own like opinion or score of yourself. And then the second thing is practicing and just giving yourself more options and doing it. And maybe that does mean going to a bar because it's some place where, you know, nobody cares and you can just practice talking to strangers and you're not going to see them again. And it's like darker and it's a little easier than at a bookstore or in the light of day, you know, at a dog park where you might see this person again. But wherever it is, practice is key, because you should be talking to and flirting with and opening conversations with a lot of different people before you see this woman that you're really excited about. Because if you see this woman, you're at your hobby or your interest area and you're like, oh my gosh, she's like, we clearly have this thing in common and she's really attractive. You don't want that to be the first time you're approaching someone. You want to have approached 100 other people already, know that you can hold a good conversation so you feel confident doing that with her.
Mm-hmm. That's perfect for the guys out there. I think clearly we could keep going on this subject forever and ever. It's a huge one. But where else, the guys that have listened to this, where should they go to find out?
Yeah, find me at datingbyblaine.com and Dating by Blaine across social platforms. Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, I'm on all of them. So check out my free advice. Let me know what you think. Let me know if it works for you.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, this has been great. We're gonna have to do this again. I'm getting an idea. Maybe I'll get the Febreze specialist on here. He's not found his one just yet. That would be a great podcast.
Yeah, maybe we can do a little coaching session.
But yeah. But no, listen, this has been great. I appreciate it, and we'll do it again sometime.
Yeah, thanks for having me.